Before we begin, I'd just like to make an announcement that Battlefield Nations is currently doing a giveaway for the DICE edition of Battlefield 1. All you have to do to enter is click the link below and follow Battlefield Nations on Twitter and retweet the tweet, and you'll be automatically entered in the giveaway. Winners will be picked within the next 2 weeks, so good luck. When you think about tanks in World War I, most likely the image engraved in your head is that of the Mark series of tanks for Britain. Today on Battlefield 1 History, we're taking a look at the iconic and beautiful Mk V Landship. Now, when you take a look onto the Western Front, when the gridlock started to happen, it was clear that something needed to change to break the stalemate along the front. In February 1915, Winston Churchill, the First Lord of Admiralty, created the Landships Committee, which, by the name suggests, to create a machine on land designed to break the stalemate along the Western Front. With the first successful tank prototyped, named Mother, completed secret testing by early 1916. The Mother design will almost be like a stepping stone and be the bare-bones design for future British tanks to take. The Landship was originally meant to have a top-mounted turret to spin around 360 degrees. Unfortunately, it had some issues with the overall balancing with the tank itself, so it had to be scrapped. 2 side-mounted sponsons on each side of the tank were added. The sponsons could hold cannons, machine guns, lookout holes, and entrances. Depending on the variation of the tank, the sponson held different cargo. The Mark tanks came in 2 variants, named male and female. The males had cannons on each side in the sponsons with Lewis or Hotchkiss machine guns. The males helped to push first and be mainly offensive, taking out enemy emplacements. The female tanks had no cannons, but had an abundant amount of machine guns on each sponson. These mainly held a more supportive role compared to their brothers, pushing alongside infantry, increasing the overall firepower of the push. By 1916, during the Battle of the Somme, the world's first tanks came into action in the hands of the British. The new, slow Mark I tanks definitely struck fear into the hearts of the defending Germans. The sight of a loud, slow, walking machine of death slowly creeping towards you shocked many who before never saw a tank in their life. But some of the Mark I tanks got stuck in the mud, unable to move, or entirely broke down when advancing forwards. Later iterations of the Mark tanks came, and one to become a real game changer was the Mark IV. Things like better armor, the placement of the fuel tank, the Mark IV also had a cover on the top of the tank as well. This helped to stop shrapnel from artillery and grenades from hitting the top of the tank. The Mark IV also offered a wooden beam to help with the tank when it gets stuck. If you ever use the Mark V in-game, you may notice a beam going across the top of the tank. This beam, when the tank would get stuck in the mud, would be thrown down in front of the tracks. The driver would then use this wooden beam as leverage to gain traction and escape the mud, making the tank useful again. It's simple fixes like this that allowed the reliability of the Landships to be a bit more tolerable, although nothing could be really done for engine failure. Now we can move on to the Mark V, which is the one that is used in-game. In short, it's basically an improved version of the Mark IV, while the Mark IV was much more of an advancement compared to the Mark V. The Mark V had its own integrated communication system and the ability for just one person to control the entire tank, where previously it took a team of 4 just to get the thing moving. By 1918, the Mark V Landships were being produced at a fast rate. Using many of the same materials as previous iterations, production shift from the Mark IV to the V was very easy. The first battle the new tank saw was in the Battle of Hamel on July 4th, 1918. This battle was an Allied victory and helped to prove the tank's worth. It crushed any doubts that the higher-ups had about the usefulness of tanks and became part of modern warfare tactics, as tanks still do exist today. But the Mark V would really shine in the Battle of Amiens, where a lot of Mark Vs were produced for. This battle basically broke the stalemate that existed for years along the Western Front, and tactics transitioned to mobile warfare, with the tank being a centerpiece of combat. Further iterations of the Mark tanks came about as well, although most did not see any combat at all. The Germans realized that to stop the enemy tanks from crossing trenches, they would just widen their own trenches and entrap enemy tanks within them. Responding to this, Britain increased the lengths of their tanks, like the Mark V Star, which is basically a longer version of the standard Mark V. Other quote-unquote super tanks were being made as well, like the Mark IX, which was supposed to carry around 30 men per unit. If the war ever progressed past 1918, it would have been very likely to see tank combat transition into these super tanks. Some of you may already seen some, like the Char 2C from the They Shall Not Pass DLC. Outside of World War I, Britain donated to Russia some Mark V tanks to aid in their civil war. Mark V tanks were a key component to gaining back major cities like Tsaritsyn. It was also said that a single Mark V tank alone helped to take the city of Tsaritsyn back in white control, which explains in-game why the Mark V is the only tank you can choose on Volga River and Tsaritsyn. All in all, the Mark V is an awesome tank, to say the least. These early tanks helped to pave the way for modern tank combat we see today, with different types of tanks suited for different roles as well. So yeah, that about wraps up today's video. If you'd like to see an upcoming thing from Battlefield 1 featured in the next episode, let me know by leaving a comment down below. And as always, it's been BloodHound, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.